It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to talk about PIcsur. So I did a video last week about Write Freely, and it's a really nice, clean, simple kind of blogging, journaling, notebook type platform. It's really nice. It's really easy to get set up and running. But one of the things I wanted to do was post some images and pictures of things as I'm going along and some of my DIY projects. So I was setting it up to just track some of my DIY stuff. It's really nice to have images to go along with stories because it helps people get into it. You know, they say a picture tells 1,000 words, and really sometimes a picture tells 10,000 words. Now, I use a lot of words when I tell you guys how to do things, but the pictures and the video add so much more to it that it's really important to understand how to do that. And using Markdown and something like Write Freely is a great way to add images, but you don't actually upload the images to Write Freely. For instance, if I do something with Bookstack, I can just drag that image and drop it onto the page, and then Bookstack stores that and knows how to access it. Write Freely doesn't really do that. It's looking for more like an Imgur, however you say that, type system. So I started looking around for an open source alternative, and I found PIcsur. And the person that says why I built this is because I looked around and I didn't see anything that anybody else had made that kind of fit the bill for what I was trying to do. And he's trying to do something kind of like Imgur, which is awesome. So you can get those images up, or Imager, I don't know, maybe that's what it's supposed to be, Imager instead of Imgur, what, an Imager. But yeah, he's trying to make something that does that. And this is a really nice, clean, simple thing to use, which I really appreciate. So I want to show you guys how to get it set up, how to get it running, how to set up your storage so you know where your images are going to be stored at and kind of what it does in the background. And then there's a little bit of extra you have to do when you set it up with a domain name so that you can actually refer to those images from other sites, or else you get some errors and you won't see the images showing up. So I want to show you what happens there, and I want to show you how to fix that, at least using Nginx Proxy Manager. If you use a different reverse proxy, you may have to figure out what else you need to do, but it's a really nice project, and it's so not difficult to get it set up once you know how to do it. It just took me some digging and a little bit of time to figure out, and I had to kind of mess with it, but once I got it, it runs terrifically well. So I want to go through the install with you guys, and then we'll go through some quick usage, and I'll show you how to get around some of those hurdles you might hit. And we're going to get into it right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. So on the PIcsur page, he's got a lot of really great information. He tells you about the features that he's completed, which is awesome. He's got a few left that he wants to work on. He keeps going down to tell you, hey, there's a few bugs, and if you find bugs, let him know about them. There's not too many listed, so that's really kind of nice too. Star the project. If you like what he's doing, make sure to go up here on GitHub on any project you like and give it a star, because that's how it kind of helps an algorithm feed other people like, hey, here's some new stuff you might be interested in. It helps these projects grow, which is always useful. It's one of those things that can help a project stick around longer for sure, but also if you appreciate his work, let him know that. He's got an FAQ, so he's like, hey, is this project maintained? He says, yeah, it's maintained. It doesn't move super fast. Again, he's a volunteer guy. He's just doing this on the side because it's a project he likes. So be respectful, be thankful, and be polite as always. With anybody who does an open source project, always be that kind of person with them. Now, why do my images disappear off the public site? So he has a public site for demo. He cleans it off every once in a while because it's not intended to be something for everybody to use. It's just intended for you to test out and see what you think of it. He's got a few different things here, so really just something to go read through. But then down here, he's got this nice how to run it yourself. He gives us this really great Docker Compose file, so we're just going to grab this guy. We're just going to take this, we're going to highlight it, we're going to copy it with Control-C right there, and I'm going to open up my terminal emulator, and I'm still logged into my test system from last week. So I'll give you kind of a reminder that we did Write Freely last week. I'll kind of show it to you. So here's Write Freely, and if we jump over here to Brian, we can go here and we can see my blogs, and I can click into my blog space, and I did this as my awesome DIY title. If I click into here, you can see this is the actual thing. So here's the page, but I don't have any images showing up yet. So we want to add some images to this thing so that you can actually see what's going on. So we're going to go and do that. So to get PIcsur set up, I'm going to do mkdir docker, or actually -p docker /PIcsur. And what this says is make a directory named docker if it doesn't exist. But if it already exists, just use the one that's there. And then it says on the next step the same thing. If PIcsur directory doesn't exist, create it. Otherwise, use the one that's already there. So that's all this does. It does it all in one little simple command, which is really nice. We're going to move into that folder, just like that. And we'll do an ls, and you see there's nothing there right now. So we're going to create our docker-compose.yml file by using nano. So I use the nano text editor. So we're going to type out nano docker-compose.yml. This is our Docker file that we need to run this thing. So we're going to paste in what he gave us with Control-Shift-V, like Victor, when you're pasting into the bash terminal or into the nano system. But you can also use right-click and paste in most terminal emulators, so just be aware of that. If you're on Windows and you're using PuTTY and you right-click, it will just paste it automatically for you. It's kind of a quirk of that, so just be aware of that. But it does make it easier, and it's a shortcut. All right, we've got a version 3 Docker Compose file. The services we're going to be running are called PIcsur, which is great. It's going to pull from his GitHub repo. The container name is going to be PIcsur, so you can find it pretty easily. Now he's using the same port as Write Freely did, so 8080. This is a very common port, so I always recommend that on the left side, you've got the host system port, and you're telling it, whatever port comes in on the host, whatever port number I put here, forward it to the container port. So this right side is important that you don't change. This is the one where the container is expecting it to be running, but this left side we can change because it's what our actual host system is listening on. So we're going to change this to 8252 because last week it did Write Freely on 8250. So we'll kind of keep these guys close together. I mean, it's not required. You could put any port number you want, but for me, just organizationally, it kind of clicks in my mind that way. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take out these hashtags right here because we want to tell it, let this host listen for requests from any IP address or domain. So this 0.0.0.0 says any IP address or domain is allowed. On the PIcsur port, we're going to leave that as 8080 because that's what it's on. That's what it is in the container. But we're going to just uncomment that guy. Then we've got this database information. So we're going to uncomment each of these lines, just like this. He just comments them out because you may want to change or do something different. The one thing we're going to change is this password right here. So we're going to make this a nice, long, strong password. So we're going to say a nice, long, strong password. And I hope you understand that this is just for demo purposes. I would never make a password that's like this. This is just the idea of you should make a really long password that is very complex and very difficult for people to pay attention to. Oh, I didn't quite put password there, did I? There we go. I'll fix that. I'm sorry about that. The database name, we're going to leave it as PIcsur. That's fine. Now we're going to need this password down below, and we want to make sure we have it exactly the same. So you'll see that here in a minute when we get there. Now he's got this thing that says the admin password. So we want to change this. We want to uncomment it, and we want to change this to a different long, strong password. So we're going to do that, and this is a different long, strong password. There, we got password that time. This next part is for your JWT secret, so that's basically a Java web token. We don't need to use it. I would just say leave it commented out because it will generate one on its own if you do that, and that's fine. Now when we get to this section, he's saying, hey, for your max file size, he's setting that to 128. This is 128 megabytes. This is 128 million bytes, which is 128 megabytes. So that's a pretty big picture file. We'll just leave it at that. He's got this part here that says the front end port. So if you're going to change something on the root area of your front end, you'd change this. I don't think you need to, so I suggest not doing it. If you want to do any logging because something's not working, you're trying to provide him feedback about a bug you found and he asked for logs, you would come in and uncomment this line right here, rerun it, rerun your Docker Compose up, and then look at the logging and provide him the logs, things like that. And then when you're done getting the logging, you come back in and change this, put this back as a hashtag so it'll be false again basically, and restart your container again. That way you don't have so much logging just eating up space. Okay. So restart unless stopped, I always like that one because I can stop it. It doesn't restart on its own. But if I don't stop it and something happens and the system reboots, it'll restart on its own, which is great. It's kind of a nice mix of both worlds there. So right here, we've got the Postgres part. This is an important part. So up above, we set the DB as PIcsur. The password we set different though. So we want to make sure we make this match what we have up here. So we're going to go grab this password. This is a nice, long, strong password, remember? And we're going to copy that guy with Control-Shift-C. And we're going to go down here and we're going to do one space. Oops, too far down. There we go. And Control-Shift-V so that we have the exact same password in both places. And everything else should be good. Now, the last thing we've got is this volume. So he creates this volume called PIcsur Data. I like to keep all of my pictures in the same location as the rest of my stuff so that when I back up my Docker stuff, it all gets backed up together. Now you have options. If you're going to use a mount, like an NFS mount, to host your pictures with a much bigger drive, you would want to set up the path to that mount on your host system right here on the left side of this colon. So you might have something like /mount/my-images/PIcsur data. Something like that. And you have to set up that mount point. You need to know how to set up your NFS mounts or anything, or Samba mount, anything like that. I'm not going to go into that. But for now, what I'm going to do, because I'm going to keep all my pictures on this same server, I'm going to do // which means inside of the same directory as I have this Docker Compose file, I want you to put my photos in that location for this database. This is going to be the database. This is the volume for the database, okay? Now we'll go back up here. Let's make sure everything looks good real quick. We have our ports, we have our container name set. We have all of our environment variables we want to use set. That's good. We've got the set of megabytes we want to use. That's great. We've got our restart unless stopped. We've got our data, and we've got our location for our PostgreSQL database. So I think we're pretty well set here. And we've got our volume defined, so that's good. So we're going to get rid of that last space there. We'll do Control-O, and then press enter to confirm that we want to save it, and then we're going to do Control-X to get out of this thing. And now we just have to start this guy up. We're going to do Docker Compose, and you can do this with space compose up -D if you have a newer version of Docker. If you have an older version of Docker, just do -compose like that. After that, we're going to do 2 ampersands, and we're going to do another command, Docker Compose logs-F. So this says bring up my Docker container, pull down the image and bring up the container and start it running as a daemon. That's the -D. That means run in the background so that I don't have to do anything to make it stay running. And then we have this part that says, after that's up and running, show me the log output as it goes through its startup process. So we're going to look at that. So we're going to let this thing go out. It's going to start pulling down the image for PIcsur. Just takes a second. It's not a huge file, so it's pretty great. It goes pretty fast. And depending on your internet speed, it'll be faster or slower. It's going to start these things up, and you'll see where it says creating, starting, and then you'll see this log output. Okay, and as long as we don't see any major errors, we should be doing pretty well. It says database system is ready. It goes through a few things where it starts creating some tables and stuff like that. And we should see this message right here that says successfully started. So we've got everything running. That's awesome. So we're going to do Control-C just to get out of that logging. We'll clear that out. And the first thing we want to do is just go to the IP address and make sure that everything opens up the way we expect. So we're going to go here to 192.168.10.60 is the IP address I'm running this on. And I'm going to go to 8252 as the port. And there we go. We've got it. Now we say, please log in. Okay, so we created a login. Don't forget about that. So we're going to put the name admin. We don't have any choice about the username. But right here we can put in a nice long, strong password with hyphens in between. Let's see if I spelled it correctly. No, but it tells me I didn't, so that's okay. So if you're ever worried because you do have a really crazy password, you can do cat dockercompose.yaml, and then you can go and just copy that thing. I'm just going to copy it right here. Oh no, I created a different one. It was a different long, strong password. See, that's my problem. I can't remember which passwords I create for what. That's why you should use a password manager. Very important and very useful. So we're going to just copy this guy right here. And we'll right click and we'll just do copy. And then we'll go back to our browser and we'll get rid of all that stuff. And we'll just paste in our password and log in. There we go. When you get the right password, that's very straightforward. So we've got this really simple thing. It says upload image. Now there are a few things. If you click over here on your user icon, you'll see that you have the images location for where all your images get stored. You've got a few settings, and of course you can log out. You can always click this to get back to this screen right here, which means you can just drag something in as far as an image and it'll upload, and it takes a whole bunch of different image formats, but you may have to convert some occasionally. Just be aware of that. So we're going to get into the usage right now. Alright, so before we get into the usage of it, we actually want to set this up to be a system we can reach on a domain name. So we're going to go here, and we're going to open up my Nginx Proxy Manager. I'm going to go into my proxy host, and I'm just going to add a new proxy. Now we called the other one ytwrite.routemehome.org, so we're just going to do ytimg.routemehome.org. Now I own the domain name routemehome.org. In my domain name settings, I have a DNS record that points my domain back to my public IP address. So I have an A record that says, if somebody goes to routemehome.org for any subdomain, send them back to this public IP address. When that comes into my firewall, it says, hey, I see this request for routemehome.org. I know that I need to send that over to Nginx Proxy Manager. Nginx Proxy Manager says, ytimg.routemehome.org. Do I have a record for that? And if it does, it'll send you on to the proper server. If it doesn't, it's just going to give you a standard, congratulations, you reached the Nginx Proxy Manager page, but we don't have the page you asked for. So it's really nice. It's really, really great that it's easy to set up like that, and I can use this constantly, and I do. I use it a lot. So what we want to do after we put in our name, you want to hit Tab or Enter to get this little chip. Otherwise, it'll disappear from this box. The next thing you want to put in is the IP address, 192.168.10.60. So in this case, this is the IP address of my host server where I'm running this application. You would want to put in the IP address of your host server. And then I used 8252. If you use the same one, put that port here. If not, if you use a different port, if you left it standard, then put in that port number here. This is the port number that's on the left side of that mapping. We're going to say block common exploits, WebSocket support. We're going to go over here and we're going to do SSL. We're going to say, you know what, I'm going to request a new SSL certificate. I'm going to force SSL, HTTP2 support, HSTS on both of these guys. Make sure my email address is in here, and I'm going to say, yes, I accept the terms of Let's Encrypt. Please give me a CA certified certificate. I'm going to hit save. It's going to go out there and ask Let's Encrypt, hey, can you reach this site? And if Let's Encrypt can, it's going to go, yeah. And here's a certificate for you to put on that site, and it's going to get put in place for us, which is really cool. So if this little pop-up just disappears like that without any other messages, we are set. So we can go here and we can just search to trim down this file a bit. So here we can see ytimg and ytwrite, which is what we set up last week. So we have our Let's Encrypt certificate, which is great. It's not showing HTTP only. And if we click on it, it should go to our page, and it does. So now we have to log in again. That's fine. So I'm just going to put in my admin username and paste in that password. There we go. We're logged in. I can tell it, don't worry about saving. Now we need to put an image or two on here to actually use. That's important. But it's really easy. So let me open up some images here in my folder. So I've got this really nice DIY project I've been working on. It's got a bunch of pictures. I'm just going to drag a picture over. Here, I'll show you exactly what I do. So this one's a JPEG, a WebP, a JPEG, and a JPEG. JPEGs are really small files a lot of times, so they're kind of nice. But so is this WebP. It's really small. So let's just drag it over, and it gets uploaded, and there it is. So this is a synthesizer controller that I had way back in the early 2000s that was really great. It's a Yamaha ESXR. But you can see a couple of things here. So one, it gives us all these different links, and I'm going to blow this up a little bit for you guys so you can kind of see what's happening. So it gives us just the straight up image URL. So if we want to send that to somebody, we can, and they can open up a web page and they'll just see the image on the web page. It also gives us the URL for Markdown, which is what we use in Write Freely. It gives us a URL for BB code. So if you're posting something to a bulletin board or a forum, maybe this is more useful, just depending on how the forum accepts their types of different image input. You get that it's a JPEG. You get some image source code if you need to put an image into something with HTML. And then you've got this other option down here as well. So I mean, it's really cool, and it's a really easy way to do things. Now you have some other options here. You've got a bunch of things going on, so you can share. You can do some different stuff here. You can see some different information. You can turn settings on and off. You can flip it around, change the height, the width, stuff like that. So you got a lot of really nice little cool settings. You could tell it, no, it's not a JPEG, it's a PNG, but it's not. It's a JPEG. It determined correctly what it was, so that's awesome. So we can close that. You can delete it. And then you can go into this kind of edit mode, and really it's just to say, hey, if you don't like the name of the image, you can change it here. It doesn't have to. You can also make the image expire, so after an hour it expires, it goes away, nobody can see it, a day, a week, a month. He's got a nice little set of presets here, which is pretty cool. So if you need to share something temporarily, say, hey, you got an hour to look at this thing and it's going to be gone. That just saves you from having to have stuff on your server that's not useful. Maybe it's just a really simple, like, here's a screenshot of an issue I've got, and you could send that to somebody and they could see it. Okay, so very cool. So we're going to cancel out of that too. So some really cool settings just per image, but then you've also got some settings up here I want to go through real quick. So you can always go to the My Images page, which is more of like a grid view, and then when you go into the My Images page, you can click on View to get back to where we were, okay, to get to these things. And then you've got the settings actually for the site. So you've got a few different settings over here. So right here, General. It says keep the original file, no. Now some people may want to keep the original file, but what happens is when this file gets uploaded, it goes through a little bit of processing on the server side just to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, so that it doesn't take up as much space. That's really important when you're doing file sharing and things like that, or when you're doing image sharing. But if you have the space and you're like, you know what, I want to keep the originals, you can change this to yes, and it will keep the originals from that point on. It'll still create a compressed version, but it'll also keep the originals for you. If you want to write an API or allow access through an API, you can create some API keys to give to another piece of software that would then use those API keys. I am not familiar with ShareX, but if you use ShareX, you can also put in the API keys for ShareX right here. You have options to have more than one user who can do things. So right now I'm logged in as the admin, but I could create myself, give myself lower level permissions where I can actually upload stuff and share it, but I don't have access to all these settings, things like that. Right now it has admin and guest. You can go in and change these things, take off permissions, add permissions, but for me it's fine. You have different roles that are defined. So these are the predefined roles, and then you've got these different permissions that they're assigned. So again, you can, other than the admin, you can go and edit the permissions that different roles have. You can add more roles if you want to add more roles as well. Very much up to you how you set that up. And then finally, you've got the system settings. So if you click in here, it kind of overlaps it a little bit, but so it says host override. I don't need to do that. Right here, you've got this authentication, so it's fine if you guys see this. I'm going to destroy this after I'm done with the videos anyways. And it says renew this token every 7 days. And if I don't put out this video for 7 days, this is going to be an invalid token anyways. And it says bcrypt strength 10. You probably don't want to go much higher than this. You could probably go to 11, but if you go to 12 or much higher, you're going to be seeing like really long times for it to be doing the encrypting stuff, and it's going to hammer your CPUs. So I suggest leave it at 10. This is very strong. This is very good encryption. You don't need to worry about that too much. Image processing. Again, you've got some settings here for the image processing time, things that it can do with that image processing, how much RAM it's allowed to use, and then you've got some usage information. So it says, do you want to allow the usage tracking by this system? Do you want to send telemetry? If he's just trying to understand, like, how is this being used, how many people are using it, then I don't mind that. If you're worried about that, though, you can 100% go in here and say, no, I don't want to do that. And this is a test system, so I don't want to junk up his data either. So just a few settings there, nothing super difficult or major, nothing weird that you can't understand, but wanted to let you know what those are. So we've got our images. Let's go ahead and go back and look at our image library here. And we're going to try to show this image over there on our write freely. So I'm going to copy this URL, which write freely uses Markdown. So I'm going to copy the Markdown URL. And let's see, where's my write freely page? Here it is. So we want to go in here and edit this thing. And I want to put in this image right here where I say, this is a controller I used back in something like 2001. I don't know, maybe earlier than that. So we'll just paste this in. So this should allow it to go and grab that image and show us that image. So I'm just going to hit save. And there we go. So you can see this just says image. So if we go in here and we actually try to edit this thing, which we should be able to do, I'll click into it. There we go. If we go here and edit, you see where it just says image. I could give this a different name. So I could say this is a Yamaha ESXR. And this is just for it to be able to link to the image. The little exclamation point makes it a link to an image. So now you just see this text. It's not the image that we're trying to get, and that's because there's a cross-origin request system in place that's causing a problem for us. So it took me a little while to kind of figure out what was happening, but once I did, then I was able to go in and actually address the issue. So inside of Nginx Proxy Manager, we need a couple of very simple, straightforward things, and we're going to go put those in so that it'll help us fix this problem where we can't see the images. So on our new image URL, we're just going to go back into Nginx Proxy Manager here, and we're going to click on the three dots. We're going to click on Edit. all you need to add is a custom location. We don't use this tab very often, but you just click on the custom locations tab, click on the add location button. Right here, we're just going to put in /. Here, we're going to put in the same IP address we already entered, 192.168.10.60 in my case. You'd put in the one for your server. And then here, we're going to put in our port 8252. And then we're going to click on this little gear icon right here. Right in here, we're going to paste in this little bit of text. And I know this is hard to read, but it's letting it know that, hey, I do want to allow the access of other origins to be able to request images from my site and see those images. I'll have this in the show notes so you guys can go get it and just paste it in. It won't be any major deal for you to go find. And I'll make sure that you have an understanding of what's going on right here. So we're just going to click on save. And now we're going to go back here. And let's try to refresh. And there we go, there's our image. So instead of getting just the text, we can now get our image to show up in our blog, and it's coming from our actual PIcsur site, which is really awesome. So now I've got a site where I can start adding other photos. So I can go here and click on upload, and I can pick another photo file here. We'll just grab this one, and it'll upload, and then we'll see it. So this is a M-Audio KeyStation Pro 88, which I use now. It's an 88 weighted key controller. It's not a synthesizer, it's just a controller, but awesome piece of equipment that I've had for like 20 years or so. So yeah, I've got a lot of really cool pictures of different things that I've had over the years, and yeah, it just kind of makes me happy to have these things. This is the Yamaha V50. This is something a really good friend of mine had that kind of got me inspired to go out and look for a synthesizer, a really awesome synthesizer. But yeah, so you can see this is really easy to pull over images, get things set up. The PVDPM3 SE is one that I had. I loved it. Really awesome thing. I still have it. Actually, it just stays in the case most of the time. But yeah, this is how you use PIcsur. So when I go to look at my actual image library now, you'll see that I've got these different images showing up, and I can use these images. I can just go in and say view. I want to grab this text right here, and of course if you don't have it all blown up all the time, it looks better. But yeah, when you have it blown up, you can go and just grab this text and use it in your different documents, your different posts. Really great way to do things. It keeps it under your local control. It means that you have control of the images that you're putting out there and who you're sharing them with and who has access to them, which I really like a lot. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time. It's your open source advocate, and I'm back, and I've set up a store with a little bit of merchandise. I love being your open source advocate, but I want you guys to be the open source advocates with me. So if you want to, get out there and get some of this stuff. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. Thank you for subscribing.